Morning, members. Ladies and gentlemen, can I please remind you to ensure that mobile phones and other devices are on silent, that banners, etc. are not permitted, and members of the public are not allowed to address the meeting, to use the microphones which are available when addressing the meeting, and that you may be filmed or recorded during the meeting. Thank you. Please be upstanding for your chairman.
Those who are newer in Sherwood District Council are just going to know that what I'm going to say at the moment. I have the privilege of going into schools. I went into Farnham School on Tuesday, Elston School this morning. At Elston, and both times we're looking at being salt and light in our communities. Salt making the communities sort of flavoursome as that something people want to taste and be in our communities, and light shining as a beacon. And in Elston School, they have the little motto that the children strive to be the best me they can be. And I think that's just lovely, to be the best me I can be. And in Farndon School, after we'd been through everything and I prayed, a little boy who was 4 or 5 on the front row said, "Reverend Liz, you did not pray properly." Okay, you didn't start off with "Dear God." So this morning I will start off with "Dear God" as I pray. So, dear God, as we gather together in this chamber, we think of those who are not with us through different reasons, and we think of friends and family and colleagues. We are here to serve our communities, and we pray that we would strive to do the best for all, especially those in need. And dear God, be in our deliberations and our decisions, and help us to be the best we can be. Amen.
Thank you, members. Please be seated. Can I ask for approval of the minutes of the last meeting, please? All those in favour to turn correct record? I think that's fairly unanimous. Thank you very much. Are there any apologies for absence? Councillor Barnfather.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I have apologies from Councillor Turner for medical reasons, Councillor Girling for other reasons, and Councillor Adams just sent us apologies. He's trying to sort out an urgent IT issue downstairs. I'll do this very short. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Henry.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have apologies from Councillor Allen, who is still unwell, Councillor Place for personal reasons, and Councillor Ann Callahan will be a bit late today because she's on other council business. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Henry. Councillor Deakin.
Thank you, Chair. I have apologies from Councillor Darby due to a family emergency, and I have Councillors Drosny and Councillor Daniel Williamson, who will both be joining us shortly and have medical appointments this morning. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Deakin. If any councillor or officer has either Okay, I've also received. I haven't got that on mine. That's true. Okay, I've also received apologies from Councillor Stephen Garner for medical illness. Sorry, I haven't got that on mine. Okay. Okay, declarations of interest. If any councillor or officer has either a disclosably pecuniary interest or a private interest in any matter on the agenda, you should declare it now. Please raise your hand now if you have an interest to declare. When called to speak, you should state whether it is a disclosable pecuniary interest or a private interest and give brief details. Anybody declare interest? No.
No.
Okay. Item 4, Chairman's business. There is no presentations today. And I've got very little to say because it's not long since we had the last meeting, but I will just remind members I am holding a Sunday lunch on the 26th of March at the County Showground at Newark. If members would like to come along and have a wonderful afternoon of roast beef, 3-course roast beef dinner, and we've got Cossack dancers and also a Ukrainian choir coming along as well to entertain us. And that all the proceeds of that will go to my good cause for the Ukrainian refugees that we are hosting in Nottinghamshire. Okay, we'll proceed for the budget meeting. May I remind members that under the relegations passed by the government in February 2014, there must be a recorded vote on any budget amendment and the final budget motion. As such, there will not be a separate show of hands vote and only the recorded vote for any amendment and the final motion. May I also remind members that the time limit for this meeting is 5:30. The meeting will only continue beyond this if necessary and not beyond 8 p.m. And we will have lunch approximately 12:30, depending how the debates are going. Okay, yeah. Okay. Right. Annual Budget Report 23-24. As set out in the Constitution for the annual budget meeting, there will be a single debate on the motion and any amendments. I will remind you that following a change to the Constitution, the mover of the motion has a 30-minute time limit when moving the motion and a 15-minute time limit when replying to the debate. The movers of any amendment have a 20-minute time limit, each when moving the amendment, and a 10-minute time limit when replying to the debate. All other speakers have a 10-minute time limit. Once the motion has been moved and seconded, I will ask each group in turn or not they have an amendment to move. Only if the group has an amendment should the members move it rise to speak on it. If there is no amendment, the member should say no amendment, and I will move on to the next group, as there is not debating the motion at this point. If an amendment is moved, I will then call for a seconder. Once the budget proposals and any amendment have been moved and seconded, I will determine whether an adjournment is necessary before I open the debate. Okay.
Chairman, sorry, it was remiss of me when you asked earlier on the agenda under declarations of interest. The County Council is in membership of both the LGA and the LGRU, and this is a budget meeting making financial decisions. I'm the chairman of the LGRU and the director of the LGA. They are both in my register of interests. It isn't a pecuniary interest, but for transparency purpose, given this is a financial decision, I just ought to declare it. And sorry, I didn't do it earlier when you requested, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Payne. Thank you. I'd now like to call upon Councillor Richard Jackson to move the recommendations shown in the report and speak on the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 12 months ago, I reported that Nottinghamshire County Council had been able to withstand the worst financial effects of the COVID pandemic thanks to the sound financial management of this authority by successive administrations since 2009. Several other councils were declaring financial states of emergency due to the costs of COVID. This council was in good financial shape due to a well-established culture of efficiency that has saved £305 million since 2010. It's a significant amount of which has been recycled back into meeting increasing frontline service demands. We were able to set a balanced budget 12 months ago, helped by a good grant settlement from central government and the incredible resilience of our workforce. Today, Mr. Chairman, I'm delighted to say that we can recommend a balanced budget and a healthy medium-term financial strategy once again for the same reasons. At the exact same time that I stood in this chamber on the 24th of February last year looking to a post-COVID future, with confidence, Putin's tanks were beginning their unprovoked and illegal invasion of Ukraine. We were aware of this breaking news, of course. We expressed our disgust at what was happening. But understandably, our initial focus was on the reckless injustice of Putin's actions and the immediate humanitarian implications. It was only really in subsequent weeks and months that political attention turned to the financial consequences of Putin's war. For example, a Deloitte survey of European chief financial officers published last July stated, and I'll quote this, "The invasion of Ukraine has delivered a sharp shock to business sentiment, which has previously been recovering as lockdown measures from COVID pandemic were lifted. Chief finance officers now record a level of risk. The immediate implications of the geopolitical situation are high inflation, low growth, and supply chain disruptions caused by the scarcity and the rising costs of raw materials, commodity, energy, and transport." Chairman, the Bank of England stated in February of last year that we expect inflation to rise to around 7% in the spring and to fall back from the middle of this year. In reality, CPI in the UK economy is currently around 10.5%, in line with the average across all European countries. The risk of escalating inflation was recognised and addressed in my annual budget report to full council 12 months ago. Additional contingency was set aside in our general fund reserves to safeguard against such pressures and against ongoing risks to children's and adult services, including significant challenges in the social care market. It's fair to say, however, that neither this council nor any other council was forecasting last February the inflationary costs of the magnitude that we are now seeing. As of last October, the rising rate of inflation compared with our budget forecast 12 months previously was delivering a £24 million pressure on our budget for the coming year, rising to almost £40 million over the course of our medium-term financial strategy. And yet, this was still far smaller than the problem facing many other shire councils whose budget shortfalls were around or even above £100 million. As part of the council's network, we were certainly not reticent in making central government aware of the scale of the challenge facing all of us. If anyone thought our council leader would be shy about voicing our concerns because of his close connections in government, they could not be more wrong. Shy is not a description that I associate with Councillor Ben Bradley when it comes to standing up and to speaking up for Nottinghamshire and the wider East Midlands. I believe by having a council leader working so closely with the key decision makers in Westminster and Whitehall that our voice is now heard louder than ever before. There were several elements of the Chancellor's autumn statement and the local government financial settlement late last year that provided evidence to support this. Perhaps the most significant movement in the autumn statement was around social care pressures. Chairman, last July, our Cabinet Member for Adult Social Care and Public Health, Councillor Matt Barney, brought a paper to Cabinet highlighting the financial pressures that we would face from having to deliver no fewer than 8 pieces of social care reform through 2022 and 2023. Councillor Barney's report committed the Council, including our Council leader, to lobby the Department of Health and Social Care with our concerns about the timetable and funding available for implementing these reforms. It's therefore significant that in his autumn statement, Chancellor Jeremy Hunt said that he had heard the very real concerns from local authorities, like this one, not least about social care charging reforms due to be implemented from October of this year. Chancellor therefore decided to delay the implementation of this important reform for a further 2 years, releasing funding instead to allow councils to provide more care packages. Jeremy Hunt said he wanted the social care system to help free up some of the 13,500 hospital beds that are occupied by those who should be at home. He allocated for adult social care and hospital discharge additional grant funding of £1 billion next year and £1.7 billion the year after. Overall, Chairman, the autumn statement delivered an extra £2.8 billion of social care funding in 23-24, rising to £4.7 billion the following year. Now, as members are aware, we've also been pressing the government for several years to deliver on the long-awaited Fair Funding Review. Unfortunately, we don't have such good news to report in this regard. This review was first promised in 2016 and is especially important to a large semi-rural county like Nottinghamshire, but we learned last December that it has now been postponed for 2 more years. As politicians, we know why this review keeps getting delayed, just like we know why government has kept avoiding the issue of social care funding for decades. The outcome of any fair funding review is sure to receive what might euphemistically be described as a mixed reaction. Shire councils like us expect the review to deliver long overdue fairer share of central funding to reflect the scale of responsibility which we carry, especially for social care. But this means other councils like some London boroughs will lose out on hitherto preferential financial treatment. No doubt they will create hell about it, Mr. Chairman. Faced with this dilemma, the government seems to be procrastinating, but I'm sorry, that's just not fair for residents and taxpayers here in Nottinghamshire. 5 years have passed since the former former councillor Kay Cutts wrote in a report, "It is clear that there is fundamental mismatch between the level of funding available to county areas and the levels of demand. Counties remain underfunded in comparison with other local authority groups. Most significantly, the remit of adult social care and the gap is exceedingly being met by county taxpayers." Chairman, I know Kay's successor as council leader, Councillor Bradley, has been doing everything in his power to push for this review, and both he and I are disappointed by this new delay. But let's be clear, Ben is still better placed than any other council leader in the country to get us to this promised land. If you need proof, Chairman, look at the frankly astonishing speed and success with which Nottinghamshire County Council and 3 other local authorities, Derbyshire, Nottingham and Derby City, have been able to secure the East Midlands devolution deal, driven from the front by our council leader. The East Midlands has won a life-changing amount of new money. It is the biggest new deal awarded to any region in this country, despite Councillor Foll's desperate and inaccurate attempt last month to compare it unfavourably with the North East deal, which is an extension of the existing North Tyne deal and not a new deal. Our task, while the East Midlands deal matures, is to chart a safe course through the immediate financial challenge facing this council so that we are ready and able to reap the benefits coming down the line at high speed. One of the key factors in plotting a safe course was always going to be the local government settlement announced on the 19th of December. It's probably no coincidence that only a few days after delivering unwelcome news about the delay to the Fair Funding Review, the Chancellor delivered a settlement that provides very significant and welcome short-term mitigation for that delay. It is only a 1-year settlement, so there are still uncertainties, and we have cautious assumptions in our medium-term financial strategy today that only a return to multi-year settlements will result. However, while we await for that utopia, I'm delighted to report that for the 2nd year running under this council leader, Nottinghamshire has received a settlement far better than anyone had expected. This is not my subjective or politically motivated observation, Chairman, but the observation of our Section 151 officer, whose job it is to examine the settlement impartially and to advise us as members what this means for the council's finances. Core spending power for all authorities will increase by an average of 9.4%. They choose to levy the maximum council tax and adult social care precept increase allowed. But specifically here in Nottinghamshire, in this coming year, we receive an extra 55.4 million in social care grant, which is up from 33.5 million last year, and now including the rolled-in independent living fund of 2.6 million. We'll receive 4.4 million of additional services grant, which is a bonus because the 7.5 million we received last year was originally designed to be a one-off grant to spend on frontline services in the context of COVID. We're receiving a revenue support grant allocation of 8.1 million, which is a 10% increase in line with inflation compared with the 3% increase in the previous year. And we'll receive a new homes bonus grant of 1.1 million, which is exactly as its name implies. In simple terms, Nottinghamshire will receive almost 12 million more in central government funding than was forecast to deliver services for our residents. We're receiving 2 specific social care grant allocations, namely the £8.3 million market sustainability grant and the £4.3 million in discharge fund grant, which I referred to earlier. So, Chairman, the autumn statement review and the local government settlement, without question, have proved to be very positive for us here in Nottinghamshire. And as a matter of fact, government grants have increased by 47% since 2018-19, proving that this council and the local government sector in general have been successful in their efforts lobbying for more funding. This extra money isn't the panacea for all challenges facing councils like ours, but what it buys us in effect is time, and time is a precious commodity. Combined with money that we will draw down from our reserves, which I'll explain later, this £12 million enables us to balance our budget not just in the coming year, but for the year after as well, while we continue to develop transformation projects that will keep this council financially healthy and sustainable for many years to come. Thank goodness, Chairman, we don't operate like Labour administrations of this council did between 1997 and 2009. If they received, as they did, unexpected £12 million windfall from government, I guarantee their reaction would have been great. We'll pocket it, we'll whack up the council tax by the maximum and postpone any planned changes and efficiency savings for another year. And to be frank, that's what some less well councils across the country have still done in recent years, albeit to a less blatant extent. As well as engaging in other widely discredited activities like speculating wildly on the property market and having the cheek to criticise sensible councils like us for not doing the same. It's little wonder why a number of these councils, some not far from here, are nowhere near as financially stable as this council is today. We welcome the well-deserved boost to our funding delivered by the local government settlement, but there won't be any hint of complacency. We will continue with our strategy of year-round budget monitoring, modernisation, efficiency, just the same, seeking the most effective ways of delivering our important services. Through this process, over the past 12 months, we've challenged the assumptions departments make about the pressures that they face to avoid feather-bedding our budget at the taxpayers' expense. We've been developing and implementing investor-save projects wherever possible to transform services and to make public money go even further. We're ensuring that we don't hold vacant posts unnecessarily in our revenue budget, and we're streamlining our work to remove any duplication, not just internally, but also with external partners such as the boroughs and the district councils. We've been continuing the rollout of hybrid working so our employees can work more flexibly and respond more directly to needs in our communities while reducing overhead costs in our buildings. We're constantly seeking opportunities to sell our professional expertise or to sweat our property assets to bring in extra income to reinvest in our vital services, and we never take it as read that we should just levy the maximum increase in council tax just because the Chancellor has given us permission to do so. As I mentioned earlier, Chairman, the estimated additional pressures presented by our departments last autumn in the context of rocketing inflation came to an eye-watering £24 million. But over the past few months, through our robust challenge process, these pressures have been reduced by £12.5 million for 2023-24 alone, including almost £8 million from the Adult Social Care Department and over £3 million from Children's and Families Department. Those reduced pressure assumptions have been duly absorbed into the MTFS with a high degree of confidence, because our departments have shown in previous years that they can deliver the service people need and remain on their financial targets. In fact, across all our departments, current spending varies by just 0.3% from our original 2022-2023 budget context, which is impressive management in the context of unexpectedly high inflation and a budget of more than £500 million. Councillors Barney and Carlton will speak later about some of the measures being put in place to reduce pressures on the adult social care budget and how our work is focusing ever more intently on how to deploy our £43 million per year public health services. Prevention, Mr. Chairman, is better than cure. We believe there is an opportunity over the short to medium term to drive even more value out of this investment to improve people's lives and to thereby reduce our future demand, not just on our social care services, but also on the NHS, building greater community, family and individual resilience through the county. Similarly, Chairman, nowhere in this authority has the benefit of an investment in early intervention been better demonstrated than by the outcomes so far of our whole family safeguarding transformation programme, overseen by our Cabinet Member for Children and Families, Councillor Tracy Taylor. As part of our budget last February, members signed off an initial investment of £1.1 million in whole family safeguarding. This ambitious transformation programme focuses on maximising the impact of edge of care intervention work, kinship care and foster care. In summary, this is identifying vulnerable children and young people and intervening as early as possible to improve their lives and their prospects, so from a troubled start they can reset their course and go on to enjoy happy, healthy and independent lives, making them less likely to enter the long-term care system or to become reliant on intensive NHS or social care support services well into adulthood. Every successful outcome for a vulnerable young person has a potential cost-benefit byproduct for the taxpayer in terms of reduced future need and future demand. But at the start of this project, it was difficult to predict precisely what that saving could be. I'm delighted to report, however, after only 12 months, that the Children and Families Department he's already estimating that this work will reduce cost pressures on our services by almost £3.5 million by 2024-25, more than originally anticipated. To put the projection into context, Chairman, at around 3 years ago, the number of children requiring to be looked after by this local authority seemed to be increasing beyond our control, but today those numbers have stabilised. 3 years ago, our children's department was overspending to the tune of almost £10 million, but today is on target against the current year. This is at a time when the Association of Directors of Children's Services are warning that children's services budgets across all local authorities nationally are estimated to require £778 million more just to stand still. We are bucking the trend big style, Mr. Chairman. The success to date of whole family safeguarding is critical to our Nottinghamshire Plan commitment to support communities and families and to keep children safe, not to mention the snowball effect that this can have for generations to come. Councillor Taylor will speak, I'm sure, more about this and other children and families matters later today. We're also investing time and money in several further transformation projects that have been taking shape in recent months. Some are at a more advanced stage than others, but each has the potential to make public money go further. One example is our hastening transition to hybrid working and smarter travel, whereby our workforce is becoming ever more flexible and responsive to customer needs while reducing the council's overhead costs and our carbon footprint. Our Improving Residents Access programme is catering for the growing customer demand for digital access to the council to become the default position, while still offering other channels for those who can't or don't want to communicate digitally. The example referring to telephone or customer services. Through modernisation and digitalisation, we've already reduced our number of office buildings from 17 to just 9, delivering a net saving of around £105,000 in overheads to date, with a further £230,000 of savings already assumed in our forthcoming MTFS. At the same time, through our Investing in Nottinghamshire programme, our forthcoming state-of-the-art carbon-neutral offices at Top Winghay will provide a new, better home for some of our services, located far more centrally in the county, as will the new Mansfield hub, which is being developed with the Mansfield District Council as part of the successful £20 million bid to the government's Levelling Up Fund. Last month, Overview Committee endorsed the findings of its task and finish review of these buildings, making 9 recommendations for consideration by Councillor Girling as we prepare for a new age of service delivery. Chairman, one of the budget pressures we did not challenge or reduce, but rather accepted into our MTFS is our duty to ensure that all local government staff are rewarded for their commitment, especially over the course of the past 2 years. We want to help our employees and their families to absorb the current cost of living pressures caused by global events. Our budget today therefore makes provision for all local government staff to receive a £1,925 pay rise, equating to a 10.5% increase for the lowest paid staff and 4% for the highest paid. This is backdated to April of last year. The award is the highest offered to National Joint Council workers in over a decade. All employees, regardless of their current leave entitlement or their length of service, will receive a permanent increase of 1 day to their annual leave entitlement from the 1st of April this year. Just last week, 3 unions submitted their pay claims for 23-24, calling for all council employees to receive a pay rise of 12.7%. This will be subject to NJC negotiations, but our budget includes an estimated pay award contingency of £10.9 million for the forthcoming financial year in preparation for potential outcome of those discussions. The number of people we employ today is significantly smaller than it was a decade ago due to the transformation, modernisation and digitalisation that I've already described. Through our ongoing staffing review with Councillor Gordon Wheeler, he will talk about this later on, we will ensure that we employ no more people, but just as importantly, no fewer people than we need to deliver the best services. Some of the efficiencies we envisage making over the next 3 years involve removing vacant posts that are no longer required, but we're also investing to employ more officers in the right places to drive transformation and help us further improve our services, better manage future demand and bring in additional revenue. Recently, I've heard Labour members imply that we're drawing down too much money from reserve to balance our budget. At the same time, the Independent Alliance members have complained that we're still holding too much in reserve. If nothing else, Chairman, certainly can't accuse those two groups of working together. I'd find either of their criticisms less ironic and spurious if both Labour and the Independent Alliance groups had not in previous years moved amendments to plunder our reserves for one-off expenditure, that was all about grabbing headlines in next day's newspapers rather than setting sustainable
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. Standing order 70, the member is not speaking to the subject under discussion. The opposition's amendment has not received a proposer and seconder yet, so he can't talk to that amendment at this stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. I never heard any mention of amendment at all. I don't know whether anybody else did. No.
Thank you, Chairman. I was referring to previous amendments by both opposition groups. I haven't talked about this current amendment. If they choose to move it, they might still realise that they don't want to pull that political stunt this afternoon. Thank you, Chairman. The Independent Alliance's claim recently in the media that we're sitting on £300 million of reserves is totally misleading, as well they know. A lot of that money is prudently earmarked for specific strategic purposes in our MTFS. It includes government grant, it includes NHS money, school balances, PFI reserves, insurance contingencies related to historical child abuse claims, and it includes investor save money to drive future transformation. Our only unallocated reserve is our general fund balance, Mr. Chairman. Currently, this is around £35 million, an amount judged prudent by our Section 151 officer, given the uncertainty that exists within the local government financial landscape and the difficulty of projecting the full impact of future inflationary pressures. In 23-24, we plan to draw down £3.9 million from reserves to absorb inflationary pressures and buy the time and flexibility that we need to continue our transformation work. Compare this with certain other councils who have had to slash discretionary services, maximise council tax and use any government money to plug overspends, debts and insufficient reserves. In Nottinghamshire, we prudently put money in reserve over many years in preparation for a rainy day, and now the council's umbrella is up, protecting our services and residents whilst councils elsewhere are far less well prepared. Last October, the County Council's network was forecasting £3.5 billion in inflationary and demand costs this year and next. The CCN said that many of its member councils will be forced to propose a core offer, meaning in effect statutory minimum level of services to stave off bankruptcy. Chairman, thanks to our long-term strategic management, this county council is nowhere near having to reduce services to a statutory minimum level. Many of our statutory services are well above minimum levels and in many cases well above the national average position. We're also still proudly provide a suite of discretionary services that are the envy of many other local authorities. Later today, my Cabinet colleagues will talk about excellent services being delivered within their portfolios and the part that each Cabinet member has played in our budget review process, identifying astute efficiencies that will release over £9 million more to help keep these services sustainable well into the future. These include, for example, more savings from the rollout of the LED street lighting in Councillor Clark's Transport and Environment portfolio. In Councillor Cotty's Communities portfolio, a forward-thinking investor save opportunity to improve facilities and attract more visitors to Home Pip on Country Park. Within the Deputy Leader's portfolio, I'm recommending that we make a small reduction to the Councillor's Divisional Fund, reducing the amount available from £5,000 to £3,000 per member. Councillor Carr expressed concern over the Overview Committee meeting. Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Carr expressed concern in the Overview Committee meeting about the effect that this might have on voluntary organisations struggling for money, as he said at this time. That's misleading, Chairman, because the CDF cannot be used to provide voluntary bodies with ongoing funding to meet running costs. We make separate provision for that kind of support through the revenue element of the Local Communities Fund, which is not being reduced. LCF will remain at the same level next year as this year. The CDF enables members to make small one-off awards to people or to groups in their electoral divisions for community benefit. As such, it's always been a discretionary fund. At this moment, Chairman, the Cabinet's view is that members should sacrifice a small amount of their own discretionary spending power to fund wider budget priorities focused on providing support to our communities at this challenging time. Many similar authorities don't operate a fund like CDF at all, including Broxtowe, where Councillor Carr is Deputy Leader. So it's this Council's credit that members will still have a discretionary pot of £3,000 each to allocate to projects and to people in their own divisions. Chairman, preparing this budget and its recommendations today, Cabinet members have been very careful, given very careful consideration to the outcomes of our budget consultation. We appropriately named it Rising to the Challenge. The responses to the survey this year was significant improvement on comparable budget consultations conducted over recent years. Responses were received showed that 65% of respondents would support a council tax increase, and 61% would support an adult social care precept to increase and to protect our services. Thank you, Chairman. This reassures me that the residents who took part in our consultations do understand the challenges that we currently face as a council and don't expect us to do the impossible, even though it appears that we are. Chairman, we also understand the cost of living challenges our residents currently face. Unlike certain past Labour administrations who would have interpreted 65% support for council tax increases licensed to charge the maximum rise permitted by government, we're not recommending that today. Last year, before the autumn statement and the local government finance settlement, the LGA argued that council tax threshold would need to rise by up to 20% to fill the funding gap facing local authorities nationally. Perhaps this reflected the parlous state that some councils and mismanaged themselves into, or maybe the LGA were employing the clever old trade union tactic of publicly pitching for a ridiculously high increase in hope to negotiating, eventually settling for maybe a quarter of that figure. If that's the case, the LGA tactics worked, Chairman. Chancellor gave local authorities permission to increase council tax by 3% and the adult social care precept by 2%. We've therefore reviewed our options very carefully. I believe it's right and responsible to recommend a 2% adult social care precept, giving our corporate director and her team the resources to continue their excellent work. We're open to lobbying government for a better way of obtaining extra funding for social care, as suggested by the Everview Committee, but right now the adult social care precept is the mechanism in place nationally for this purpose. Regarding council tax, I'm not recommending the maximum 3% rise being implemented by many other councils. Instead, I'm proposing a council tax increase of just 2.84% for the coming year, which amounts to a £600,000 savings for taxpayers across our county compared to where the maximum rise is applied. Councillor Creamer at the recent Overview Committee played down the difference between a 2.84 and 3% increase. My reply to him is yes, the difference between 3% and 2.84 isn't huge, but it still means we're only asking the Nottinghamshire residents for the amount that we believe we need and not a penny more. Perhaps that's a foreign concept for Councillor Creamer and his colleagues. In fact, having frozen council tax for 4 years between 2010 and 2013, Conservative Group returning to office in 2017 has charged less than the maximum permitted level of council tax or adult social care precept in 3 of the past 5 years, and we're asking less than the maximum once again this year. 59% of properties in this county are in Band A and B, meaning most households across Nottinghamshire will see a council tax increase of less than £1.10 per week. That's why we made this clear in our media statements. The average increase for all households across the county will be £1.30. These increases reduced to 88 pence per week and £1.03 per week, respectively, once the average level of discounts get applied. Our medium-term financial strategy shows we're in a position to set a balanced budget, not just for the coming year, but for the year after too. And we're already having further transformation plans in place, all being prepared to address the manageable 18 million and 30 million pounds budget differentials estimated over the next over years 3 and 4. For many councils, during and after 20 years of Labour control, Chairman, the County Council is the highest charging shire county in the country. Thanks to Conservative leadership, we're not the highest charging council anymore, but we're still higher in that particular league table than I want us to be, partly due to Labour's legacy, but also partly due because we're waiting the long-awaited long-term fair funding review we expect and deserve from Fairer Funding Review. This budget puts us in a position to make our service sustainable for the long term. It's a budget that protects key services like children's centres, youth centres, recycling centres and libraries, and plans for new sustainable ways of delivering services such as family hubs, demand-responsive transport and energy-saving technology, as Cabinet colleagues will describe later on today. I put it to you, Chairman, that we have an excellent council leader delivering for this county, a fantastic team of Cabinet members watching over all aspects of our work, an outstanding group of chief officers, including our new chief executive managing our services through some exceptionally trying times, brilliant and committed employees delivering the best possible services to our residents and to our service users, and quite possibly the best financial position of any equivalent council in the country. Thank you, Chairman. I move the budget and the medium-term financial strategy.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. It's perfect timing. Councillor Ben Bradley to second the motion.
Thank you, Chair. Second motion, reserve my right to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Does the Labour Group intend to make an amendment?
No, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Poll. Does the Independent Alliance have an amendment? If there is an amendment to rise and move it, speak on the amendment. 10 minutes. 20 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When I look that way, I'm checking the clock. And this is where I do actually sympathise with my colleague, Councillor Richard Jackson, when we try to say everything within the allotted time. Firstly, Mr. Chairman, can I formally thank Mr. Stevenson, our Section 151 Financial Director, and Mr. Palfreman, our Group Manager for Finance and Strategy, and their teams for their impartial advice and patience in helping us to put this amendment together. Can I also thank David and Phil, our Independent Alliance staff members, who have worked so hard to support Councillors Waters, Zadrozny, Carr and myself over the last few weeks, and especially our fellow Independent Alliance colleagues, the A-Team, who have all helped to create what is more than simply an amendment, but an alternative people's budget. At the budget meeting last year, we introduced the excellent Councillor Debbie Darby of Collingham and Newark Division, and again last November, the governance at this council changed. The Independent Alliance introduced another winning councillor, Kane Oliver, in Eastwood Division. We now sit as the joint opposition on Notts County Council. It was always our firm belief that any opposition worthy of the official role should be putting an alternative budget together. We want to show residents across the county just what an alternative county council run by the Independent Alliance councillors could look like. It is important when setting out an alternative that we look at the context for it. This is an alternative budget set out in a cost of living crisis. Hundreds of thousands of residents in Nottinghamshire are living through the most difficult time of their lives. Indeed, the biggest indicator of child poverty we have is free school meal claimants. In our county, out of 114,297 children on school rolls, 25,265 pupils claim free school meals, 22.1% of the school population. And this will almost certainly rise by the next full council meeting. The cost of living crisis has seen food prices soar. Food inflation is 16%. And energy prices spike, as we all know, affecting hundreds of thousands of households across Nottinghamshire. Some are facing a real dilemma of choosing between heating and eating, with the most vulnerable being affected most. So what we are faced with today, Mr. Chairman, is whether to take a decision to exacerbate this. Before us today, we face a decision whether to put council tax up by 4.84%, or about £79 for the average Band D property. Now, reducing this council tax rise has been central to our deliberations since the start of the year. Roughly 1% of the rise raises 4.3 million in funding for the county council. And this does not mean that it's been an easy option to swap out the council tax increase with general fund balances. But we have asked the questions, Mr. Chairman. The risks in the budget and across the medium-term financial strategy, MTFS, had to be taken into account. as well as the impact across the MTFS, e.g. not increasing council tax by, say, the equivalent of 4 million in 1 year, really has the effect of missing out on 16 million over a 4-year cycle, as we understand. In the light of the government stating that all councils should use their reserves or savings to reduce the council tax increase, we tried. We were advised that we couldn't do this as the minimum reserve levels have effectively been reached. In other words, we go back to what Liam Byrne MP left on his desk in 2010. There is no money left. Indeed, paragraph 10 of Appendix C in your papers before you today explains the SIPFA position, where there are no statutory minimum levels of reserves, but it goes on to say that it is most important, whilst we have flexibility, that we do take seriously the advice of our senior officers. And Mr. Chairman, we have listened very carefully to the judgment of our senior officers, and there is no room for manoeuvre. This budget already commits to the use of 3.9 million in reserves, and over the course of the 3-year MTFS budget, 49.7 million will be taken from reserves. We have a ridiculous ongoing situation where the government asks councils to produce a medium-term financial strategy for years to come, but doesn't give it a multi-year settlement, something this council, to be fair, has been asking for years to happen. The failure of government to give this council a multi-year financial settlement means that any financial predictions on the MTFS is simply guesswork. Put simply, Mr. Chairman, the Conservative administration are winging it. So with respect, we can disregard the MTFS until we receive longer term funding. This is a worst case scenario built on an assumption that councils like Nottinghamshire will continue to overtax residents because of the lack of support from central government. That leaves us with a budget before us, the miserable no money left budget, the budget in which we are forced to make difficult life-changing decisions with no leeway. Last year, my colleague, Councillor Lee Waters, revealed research by the Independence Alliance at County Hall showing that government grants had been reduced by tens of millions per year since 2010. This brings me to our alternative people's budget. It is about dealing with the biggest reputational issue that this council faces. Not my words, Mr. Chairman, but the words of Councillor Neil Clark, the Cabinet Member for Broken Roads and Pavements.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. I'm not the Cabinet Member for Broken Roads. There is no such title.
Thank you, members. Councillor Pugh-Holden.
I've already explained why we are setting an alternative today. It is a responsible thing to do. But of course, it does mean that we will have to hold our nose and back a council tax rise that we tried to stop. But only if you back our fully costed legal proposal to fix our broken roads and pavements. On seeing our budget proposals, Councillor Richard Jackson called them a gimmick. Well, if a gimmick invests in our broken roads and pavements, if a gimmick invests in the highways infrastructure, if a gimmick invests in our local communities, then I will choose this responsible, positive choice. My colleagues have spoken to hundreds of residents, and others have spoken to hundreds of residents, who tell us to do the basics properly and fix our broken roads and pavements. with perhaps one or two brave exceptions, the Conservative group are deliberately avoiding knocking on doors and talking to their local residents. Let us look first at what we would save. We would propose more savings in the marketing and communications department. Some of our staff have quietly told us that they don't know what their colleagues do. Last year we had an insight into the reasons for its expansion. Talking to the Personnel Committee 2 years ago, Councillor Jonathan Wheeler, when backing 2 more staff for the team, stated it's vital that we increase the profile of people like our leader, Councillor Ben Bradley MP. Ask anyone.
Gentlemen, please. Thank you, members.
It was made
Members, please. Can I have a little bit of order? Caspian.
Ask anyone in Nottinghamshire if they want staff dreaming up fancy press releases or repairing our roads properly, and I don't think it will take a spin doctor to work out the answer. This is a team, Mr. Chairman, that thought it was a good idea to pen a column from Councillor Neil Clark between Christmas and the New Year, stating that residents were delighted with the improvements to their roads. That's why, Mr. Chairman, we are proposing more savings in the PR department on top of what is already proposed. This money will be directly transferred to the Highways Department to staff the biggest investment in fixing our broken roads and pavements for generations. The next saving comes from deleting vacant posts. In meeting after meeting, we have asked the question about the impact of vacancies on this council, to be told the same thing, that vacancies have no impact on service delivery. In that case, Mr. Chairman, this is an obvious saver. Again, many of these posts will be directly transferred to highways. The Alternative People's Budget Amendment represents the biggest ever annual spend on the biggest problem we have, the state of our broken roads and pavements. Since the Independent Alliance inspired Highways Review, have things really changed? Well, listening to presentations given by this council, you would think residents are happy. Indeed, Councillor Neil Clark told the media in December, crucially, residents are now telling us that they can see a vast improvement in their roads, which is fantastic. I can assure Councillor Clark that this is not the case. I've been in Bingham with others, and we have had scores of complaints. You can say the same in Eastwood, Newark, Huthwaite, Kirkby, Mansfield, Sutton, Bramcote, Beeston, Selsdon, and of course most other places in the county. In fact, the only people you would think will be happy with roads in this county would be perhaps the residents of Gedling. Exactly a week after this council claimed it would be 10 years before a pothole appeared in the brand new shiny Colliery Way, the way over budget Gedling access road. Guess what appeared? What our alternative budget does is to find the money to spend the biggest amount to be spent in a year on roads and pavements for generations, and gives you the money to staff it properly. You would think you'd be cheering this. I repeat, it's fully costed, legal, balanced plan to spend over 2.9 million extra on our broken roads and pavements in every single borough and district in the county. The Independent Alliance have a consistent policy on wanting to ensure that any highway spending is equitable. We want to make sure funding is spent and the difference seen in every part of Nottinghamshire. And we want residents to tell us honestly that we are doing a good job. The package is funded in 2 ways. We can't wait 3 years to spend budgeted money. We need it now. And we will be spending the whole of the highways reserve this year. The second way we will fund this massive investment is by once and for all scrapping the planned new officers at Top Wighay Farm. When this was first mooted at a policy committee in February 2020, I was initially supportive. Then in March 2020, COVID happened. The way staff worked for Nottinghamshire County Council changed forever, and we agreed a hybrid strategy on the 15th of July 2021. This council has embraced new technologies, and most of the workforce opted to work from home when they could. The finance followed to ensure this could happen, and after £500,000 spent on technology to ensure we could stream meetings on YouTube or Teams, etc. This has meant there is currently a scrutiny review of our estates. As the government insists on 1-year settlements, we have to look at the finances during this year. On December the 22nd, the leader of this council, Ben Bradley, did an interview with the local government reporting service when he spoke about new bars and restaurants by the River Trent, thus undermining the scrutiny process and having no thought for the effect of such speculation on County Hall staff. That said, as one of my colleagues, Councillor Shaw, has maintained, the plan to sell this building to the highest bidder was always the worst kept secret in County Hall. The question needs to be asked, why after COVID do we want to build a new council office when we are still not clear on what we wish to do with our existing estate? When every other council is looking to save costs, we seem to be doing the opposite. You say the total cost will be 15.7 million. That was said 3 years ago when inflation was much lower. I can reveal today that the cost in real terms of the new offices at Top Wighay will be touching 18 million, just below. I am confident, like many councillors, we may not get any change.
Point of order,
from
Mr. Chairman.
25.
That figure is literally just made up.
We have to take your word for that. We have to take your word for that, do we?
At every turn, this council tells us that no decision on the future of County Hall has been made. So the question remains, Mr. Chairman, why do we need new council officers near Hucknall? When it was announced that the Labour Mayor, Andy Abrahams, and the Mansfield District team were successful in their 20 million levelling up bid, it was also announced that Notts County Council were looking to move into the former Beales department store. So the question again remains, do we need more officers built from scratch? Is it not better to turn the Top Wighay building plans into badly needed asphalt and to pour this into our potholes across Nottinghamshire? Independent councillors have a track record of listening to residents in Hucknall. When Hucknall said it didn't want 3,000 houses built on Wyburn Farm, Ashfield District Council listened and removed it from their draft plan. Now we can say no to these officers once and for all. Contracts haven't been signed. Contracts haven't been signed. Sorry, not one sod of earth dug. Yes, it will cost 4.2 million in abortive costs. But difficult choices sometimes have to be made for the right long-term decisions. And don't say we didn't warn you. Ask any resident whether they would prefer new council officers. We clearly don't need, and you know what the answer will be. Mr. Chairman, I would like to ask members to support our plan to maintain the councillors' divisional fund at £5,000. This is something all councillors must support. The reduction in planned savings as a result of not reducing the council's divisional fund will be funded from the revenue contingency fund, partly offset by a small increase resulting from the updated council tax property base. There is no impact on planned precept calculations. Councillors know that this is a vital link between councillors and community groups. Mr. Chairman, in November, Councillor Richard Jackson, said, "I've no hesitation in stating my disappointment and frustration that the fair funding review has been delayed again. Now it's been scrapped for this Parliament, meaning almost certainly it will have to be implemented by a new Chancellor of the Exchequer, most likely Rachel Reeves." In conclusion, Mr. Chairman, that our budget has been declared as legal and balanced by the independent finance chief at the County Council, it has also been declared as deliverable by the monitoring officer. Any claims that this is a gimmick or that it's not deliverable are a real insult, not just to officers, but residents of the county. Mr. Chairman, today Council faces a clear choice. Fix our broken roads and pavements or build new offices in Hucknall. I commend the only alternative people's budget to Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pure Harden. Yes, Councillor Fold.
So thank you. Okay, I mean, just a question for the mover of this amendment. Given that you just described the choice of winging it and this budget as miserable, can you confirm that if this amendment is accepted, with the exception of the changes outlined in the amendment, you'll support the rest of this Tory budget?
Is that point of order or point of clarification? Yeah,
to address that in summing up.
I think we'll address that in summing up. Thank you, Councillor Cole, for that. Does this amendment have a seconder?
Yes, Chairman. I'll second this. Yep. Thank you, Chairman. In second this motion, can I also thank Nigel Keith and the finance team at County Hall putting together a balanced budget in these times of huge financial pressure is no mean feat. We know from putting together the People's Alternative Budget, the only alternative budget, but money is tight. We have been on a downward spiral since 2010, and the revenue support grant has dwindled to next to nothing from a high of 116 million in 2016 to a few million this year. The failure of the Conservatives to adequately fund local government means that yet again before us we see a proposal to make up the budget from the backs of the pockets of the hard-working taxpayers of Nottinghamshire. Since the Conservatives took over this council in 2017, what we have seen is a succession of money grabs. Today, you are proposing another 4.84% increase, just shy of 0.16% of the maximum without a referendum. Councillor Bradley, last month you said you would have no issue defending this tax hike and the consequences of this budget. So I ask you and this administration to defend the proposed reduction in the councillors' divisional funds annually from £5,000 to £3,000, as in line with our amendment states, this will save the council £132,000 out of a budget of hundreds of millions. We propose reinstating this as we believe the grant is crucial and strengthens links between councillors and the excellent work of voluntary organisations. Since being elected to this council in 2021, I have paid out thousands of my CDF to good causes. I work with all the organisations based in and around Hucknall in trying to identify other sources of funding. This has been hugely successful and in some cases led to larger grants from other sources like the Communities Grant. What we are talking about today, Mr. Chairman, is not slashing the 20,000 grants or the massive grants you give out to fund parish council projects. Let's be clear that this decision will not lead to one less cucumber sandwich at a party at a rural parish council. We are talking about smaller organisations who want a few quid to carry out good works. So if council leader Ben Bradley wants to defend this budget, and I know from the last council meeting he enjoys listening to lists, can he tell me which of these I should have said no to this year? So I've supported the Hucknall Boys Amateur Boxing Club, the Hucknall Residents Reach Out Group, Muted, the men's mental health charity, a great firework through Hucknall that generated lots of money for that charity, the Hucknall Royal British Legion to help pay towards the parade, the 3rd Hucknall Scouts, the Handmade Theatre Group. They support dementia sufferers and those who have been victims of domestic abuse, the 1803 Squadron of the Royal Air Force Air Cadets, Hucknall Sports, the under-14s team, Hucknall Town Netball Club, the Holy Cross Catholic Church to help fund a soup kitchen and a cafe for the most vulnerable, the Boys Brigade, Music for Everyone, the U3A, who in turn help support other community organisations, Hucknall Sports, Under Nines, and then the Hucknall National Out of School Club. These are all organisations I supported this year, all with grants of between £150 to £500. I also have another list of groups, but I couldn't support because I ran out of money. The CDF funding is a valuable small way of supporting organisations like I've listed. Put simply, there would be no way of them accessing smaller grants like these. Yet Councillor Richard Jackson thinks this is cause for celebration. He told reporters his planned reduction in divisional funds will provide more support to our most vulnerable residents through other channels. Maybe Councillor Jackson can explain on his reasons for saying this in his summation. Just why does he not seem to support councillor divisional funds? What we are proposing today, Mr. Chairman, is a sensible budget amendment that would be welcomed by community groups. In a budget of hundreds of millions, it wouldn't even touch the sides. This will be paid for via extra money found when the council tax base has been recalculated. Moving on to other parts of our amendment, the savings we have found comes from communications and marketing by deleting vacant posts. I myself, like Councillor Purdue Horan, have repeatedly heard senior cabinet members state on record that job vacancies at this council don't impact services. It is for that reason that this suggestion is sensible. I'd rather have staff at this council actually rolling up their sleeves and getting stuff done rather than sitting at home and thinking of ways to boost the celebrity of people like Ben Bradley. We have this ridiculous situation where we have Richard Jackson defending spin doctors whilst advocating cutting funding to our impoverished community groups. In bringing forward the Highways Reserve and scrapping the Top Wigay Farm, we will deliver a funding boost of 2.9 million for Ashfield, for Bassett Law, for Broxtowe, for Gedling, for Mansfield, for Newark and Sherwood, and for Rushcliffe. So where has this money come from? Well, last year this council budgeted 15 million to be spent, 3 million a year for 5 years. Such as was Ben Bradley's delight about this, he shouted all about it. He said it was the great big fix. He even produced a graphic stating that Ashfield Independents voted against £15 million highways funding, despite the fact but we had proposed to double this. Fast forward a year, and now you tell us an extra over 20.9 million, in your words, won't touch the sides. I put to the current leader of this council is just making it up as he goes along. Just like 1 week he said the new mayor for 2 million people for Derbyshire, Derby, Nottingham, Nottinghamshire, but wants to scrap the one in Mansfield because it won't have a blue rosette on it. Since I was elected in 2019, I have reported hundreds of roads and pavements to be fixed across Hucknall. I've won some like Brookside, dubbed the UK's worst road by ITV. This is only because we fought by hook and by crook. What we want to do, Mr. Chairman, is bring planned highway spending forward, and we have provided the stop budget too. We are serious about making a difference. This is our chance, Mr. Chairman, and we should grab it with both hands. I ask the council to support the people's budget, the budget the people have asked for, and the budget that will fix Nottinghamshire's broken roads and pavements. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Waters. Councillor Jackson, do you accept this amendment?
Chairman, we don't accept this amendment. I apologise for calling it a gimmick in the media recently. I should have said it was confused. It seems almost sort of, they don't quite know what to say. It's a miserable budget we're putting forward, and yet they support 99.86% of it. Chairman, if we talk about it for an hour, that means 5 seconds of difference. I don't accept on so many reasons. Budget's been put forward after months of hard work. It's been put forward after our consultation. Chairman, I'll cover a great deal more when we come to summing up, but we certainly don't accept it.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. As mentioned earlier, there will be single debate now on the motion and on any amendments. Now I'd like to call members who have indicated to speak. We'll start with Councillor Carr.
Thank you, Chairman. I rise to support the opposition's amendment to the budget. I have to say the benches opposite are a little bit rattled, it seems to me, this morning. Well, I'm not surprised with rattled, because in less than 100 days they're going to find out how angry the people of this country are. And I'm hearing from friends and colleagues in other authorities, both Liberal Democrat and Labour, that even Rushcliffe, Newark and Shore are at risk of falling away from Conservative hands. I, for one, Mr. Chairman, are fed up of listening to excuses for the economic mess that we are in. First, it was the EU's fault. Well, we've left that, and we're in a worse state than we were in before, with negative growth. Then COVID, millions handed out to their friends via fast-track contracts. And now it's the illegal war in Ukraine. I think you spend too much time in the House of Commons. This isn't the House of Commons, Councillor Bradley. I think you should really keep quiet.
Councillor Carr, please continue.
Thank you.
If you'd let him.
What I want to know is when the party opposite are going to apologise for the sham of their government. Never. When are they going to take responsibility for the economic disaster that was Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng? There is only one consistent in the last 7 years, and that's your incompetent government. Then you'll turn to the fact that we have an MP who is also leader, putting knots at the forefront of the government's mind. So how do you explain that Broxtowe Council has got the 18th worst financial settlement in the whole of England? Gedling have got the second, and Ashfield the first. That really helped, didn't it, having you as the MP and leader of the council there. Now, I would like to turn to CDF.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. Can I point out that I am not the leader of any of those authorities? I would have thought that was relatively clear.
You're the leader of this one.
Members, thank you. Councillor Carr, please go on.
Councillors' Divisional Fund. I think Councillor Waters has actually already said how important it is for us as county councillors to help people and communities with projects such as this. It used to be 10,000. The proposal now is it's going down to 3. So that's a 40% cut, and somebody said it was a small reduction. A 40% cut, a 40% cut this time, but we'd already had a 50% cut from before. So that's 70% cut from when I first started being a county councillor. I also support, I've nearly spent the vast majority of my CDF, as has Councillor Owen, has spent nearly all of his CDF. But there are 3 Broxtowe County councillors in this room who have spent 0, who have spent £35 as at the 1st of February, and who have spent £75. And the ones that have spent money, it's not gone to a community group, it's gone to NCC Catering to fund food at an awards event. Now, I was named 3 times in Councillor Jackson's speech, so I'm going to name him. You're the one that spent £35, Councillor Jackson, so it's no wonder you don't agree with the CDF. It's no wonder you don't agree with the CDF. Why don't you just abolish it altogether and be done with it? Then you won't have to bother the £35 either. So, let's have a look. Councillor Bradley is another one who's spent nearly all his money. Well done. Yeah. Some excellent things that you've supported. So, what are you going to say to them next year, Councillor Bradley, when you haven't got that money to give all those people it? Who are you going to disappoint, Councillor Bradley? And I've heard it said that they can go to the community grants that we give out, that Councillor Cotty's team ably deal with. But let's not forget, last year, almost all of them were reduced, including Citizen Advice Broxtowe, which gives actually amazing help to people suffering in the cost of living crisis. There was only one exception. There was one organisation that got an increase, and that was Mansfield CVS. What a coincidence. CDF needs to remain at £5,000, and I, for one, Councillor Fold, will not vote for any budget that's got a reduction of CDF in it. So that answers your question. Well, yeah, I'm talking about CDF now. So I recommend this budget. It's well costed. It's well thought out. I know how much time has been spent with officers. So we've done it responsibly, and I would urge you to vote for the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carl. Can I just remind members when you're speaking, actually, just to keep the microphone in front of you, because it doesn't pick you up when you turn round and address the rest of the audience or group. Councillor Jim Creamer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And before starting, just move our condolences or whatever to the people of Turkey and Syria. The actual earthquake, the suffering they go through at the moment. Right, yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Firstly, the Labour Group would like to acknowledge the hard work of County Council officers who I know will have played a major role in helping to guide the Cabinet in setting their budget. I'd like to thank officers also for the support they've given us members of the Labour Group, providing helpful briefings on the budget and answering our questions. The finance team do a brilliant job at this council, and we do think it's important for us to acknowledge and recognise that. Now, responding to the budget amendment put forward by the Independent Group, the Labour Group will not be supporting these proposals, although we do acknowledge it does have some good points, on which I'm sure we would agree, which I would get on to. But we will be not supporting it because the proposed solutions, we feel, do not understand or address the problems we face in this county. On roads, it's not just an issue of more money. The fact is, the Conservative Group have already allocated significant money to the roads, and so the real reason is that a service promised by this ruling Conservative Group is simply not being delivered. Therefore, giving money to the Conservatives to continue to under-deliver is just throwing good money after bad. Who would do that? And that is not the answer. Despite a cross-party review of the highway service, when left to the Conservatives, as always, they continue to under-deliver. So I think we can all agree on that. So, yep. I asked if your amended budget was to pass here today. Are you telling us that you have faith in this Conservative administration to ensure the potholes in Ashfield or elsewhere in the county will actually get filled and the roads and pavements fixed? Don't think so. The Labour group don't, because the proof is in the pudding already. They've already failed over several years. Additionally, the Labour group see new infrastructure in the county, at Topwigate or elsewhere, as an opportunity for investment and jobs. It's surprising to see the independent group scapegoat opportunities for residents in their own doorstep. It's also a false dichotomy to say it's either money for good roads or Topwigate. Currently, under this administration, it could be neither. Under Labour, it would be both. Under a Labour council, the Topwigate site would be used to its full potential to deliver whatever services and support is needed to people in Ashfield, Gedling and across the county. And just finally on the presentation, it is financially irresponsible to ignore the medium-term financial strategy, which is what they're saying. So now speaking to the original budget, Mr. Chairman, this is the first budget set since the cabinet system has come in. And when discussing the budget this time last year, one of our members observed that this administration was 1 year in and already out of ideas. That turned out to be not entirely true. In the last year, you have at least one good idea, the £1 uplift for care workers, and it's just a shame for you that your best idea was in fact a Labour group idea. Any ideas, yes, lifted, any ideas that lifted directly from our alternative budget and implemented with only some success, I might add. 6 months later than it would have done had you just accepted our alternative budget in the first place. So we've learnt that lesson from last year. Now, for public announcements around today's budget, Cabinet members appear to want to be replaying an old line made famous by Harold Macmillan, that despite a time of peak inflation and a cost of living crisis, apparently this is true, Nottingham residents have never had it so good. Well, I don't see where. Well, Mr. Chairman, let me tell you the realities for residents look very different to the rhetoric coming from this administration. The rhetoric is that residents are being told taxes aren't being raised by the full amount. Here we go. The reality is that council tax is going up by 95% of the maximum available. That's 95%. The rhetoric is that residents are told no significant cuts are being made. The reality is there are well over £2 million of cuts in this budget, dressed up in the language of deleting vacant posts and staffing efficiencies. Now, some of these cuts may not equal people being made redundant, but it's confirmation that services will be expected to deliver more with less. And it's been made clear to our members by no less than the Cabinet Member for Transformation recently that this salami slicing approach to services has already gone too far. Need is growing in the county and we need more staff to deliver services at this time and not fewer staff. Additionally, Mr. Chairman, the proposed cut of £132,000 to the Council Development Fund, whilst not significant amounts in terms of the overall budget, will be seen and will be felt significantly as a direct attack on the small organisations that charities and the community groups across the county so often overlooked for funding elsewhere. The fact is that communities know their own needs better than anyone else. And while this particular means of distributing money may have its flaws, and the Labour Party accedes to that, but that should not justify the case for taking money out of communities, and that actually goes against the aims of the Conservative Minister's own council plan. Let me be clear, when the Labour group regain control of the council, one of our first orders of business will be to ensure that cuts to communities are reversed. And if the Finance Cabinet member opposite wants to pinch another good idea from Labour, he will consider this decision that the CDF funding reverse is for a year. Review the CDF funding can be fairly and more effectively distributed across areas of the county. You're quite welcome to think that. Hopefully not as long as wait as long as 6 months.
Yeah, well done.
Moving on to the council tax rise, Mr. Chairman, the council tax increase, which is 95% of the maximum possible, is not a discount to boast about. I appreciate residents are used to hearing opinions of Conservative MPs in this part of the country who expect our residents to live on 30 pence meals a day. But even so, that 5% is only 6 pence a week below the maximum. That won't help put food on people's tables, and it won't go far with the hundreds of pounds added to some of our residents' mortgages as a result of the government crashing the economy with that reckless mini-budget last year. While on the subject, I'd just like to remind members opposite that it's exactly because of this government and the last decade of having a Conservative government that has seen council's total grant funding slashed by £1 billion over the last decade. That's to this council, and we're expecting 1.4 billion for 4 councils of the same size, if you like, over the next 30 years. So take very quickly, give very slowly. The cost of these decisions have been shouldered by our poorest residents, who have had to watch their local service be cut or underdelivered, and to add insult to injury, be expected to pay council tax rising year after year for the privilege. The members opposite parrot the hollow slogan, "This government is levelling up." Well, for Nottinghamshire and the East Midlands region, who continue to receive the least in terms of per person public services funding, another rising counter is asking struggling Nottinghamshire residents to pay for their own levelling up. The public do not deserve to be conned this way, Mr. Chairman, and it is an unforgivable con. It's clear that under a Conservative leader defending a Conservative government, the priorities set in the Nottinghamshire plan will never be delivered. How can we expect health and well-being in all our communities to improve when this council is unwilling to look again at failing services we commissioned, and when we're seeing nurses having, for the first time in their history, having to go on strike due to the appalling way they and the health service are treated by this government? Why should we expect you to grow the local economy and improve living standards when you've abandoned some of your own strategies halfway through, like the visitor economy strategy, and when you partly impose a prime minister on us who, without the mandate of the British public, crashed the economy, going back to that wonderful economy? Because make no mistake, the cost of that £30 billion from that disastrous mini-budget is now being felt in mortgage payments. It's also being felt in the struggling shops and business in our towns and our villages as well. So we will not supporting this budget, and we will not be proposing an alternative budget because, frankly, Mr. Chairman, we have no faith in a Conservative cabinet defenders of this weak government in freefall to deliver anything meaningful for the people of Nottinghamshire. The Labour Group opposed the budget presented to us today. This country and this country needs change. And if the members of it are still out with ideas, they would need to rely on our help again this year. Well, they might as well get out of the way and let Labour take over. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Creamer. Councillor Oliver.
Mr. Chairman, I'm pleased to back this amended budget today. I'm still kind of getting used to the procedures and meetings, so I'd like to thank the members for their patience with me. As a businessman based in my division of Eastwood, I take all financial decisions very seriously. And this is what we're doing today. Put simply, our decision today will take £79 out of the back pockets of hard-working residents already struggling in a cost of living crisis. What are we doing to make it worth their while? Looking at the budget documents, it's more of the same broken promises, more of the same broken roads, more of the same broken pavements. What the Independent Alliance alternative does is change the direction of the council. Ours is a people's budget that listens to the concerns of the people. In the recent by-election where the Tory party came a resounding last, people spoke loud and clear. They told us that they wanted someone to fix our broken roads and pavements, not sit behind a desk and pretend to do it. That's why I'm proud to back our alternative today, Mr. Chairman. In Broxtowe, this budget means 2.9 million on our highways. The same in the other 6 boroughs and districts as well. For me, it's a no-brainer. Even if we don't get this extra money today, I'll tell you what, I'll still be pushing for Queen's Road South at the front of the queue to be fixed. Something that hasn't been fixed for the past 5 years. And what about the Labour Party? When I was elected in November, a lot of people spoke of the fact that for the first time since the Labour Party created, they were not controlling Notts County Council or the sole opposition here. Today, Mr. Chairman, I know why. Clueless, devoid of ideas, existing but a crumbling relic of times gone by. Councillor Creamer, reclaim control. You can't even put an alternative budget out there. The Labour Party may be lacking ideas, drive or determination to run this council, but the only thing I will give them is that they are living in the real world. I received an email at 2:06 p.m. yesterday, reportedly written by the Cabinet Member for Broken Roads and Pavements, Neil Clark. In it, he answered the question I
Point
posed
of
at
order,
the last.
Mr. Chairman. Point of order.
Ca-
I am the Cabinet Member for Transport and Environment. I am certainly not the Cabinet Member. There is no title Cabinet Member for Broken Roads.
Thanks for the clarification, but I'm sure the people of the public would disagree. I asked him for evidence to back up his assertion, which infuriated residents when he said on December the 29th, residents are now telling us they can see a vast improvement in their roads, which is fantastic, apparently. He replied yesterday, at this stage, my appraisal of increasing public satisfaction with pothole repairs is partly evidence-based and partly anecdotal. In other words, I think we can all agree he guessed. He made it up. It was as accurate as a comment as when Lee Anderson claimed that a family could eat for a day for 30p. Lee Anderson is a symbolic of everything that is wrong with the Conservative Party. I can assure the council that Neil Clark is wrong. I was stunned to attend my first place committee when I listened to a Chemical Ally style presentation from him on how wonderful our roads and pavements were. I think you should stick to your videos, Councillor Clark. I couldn't believe what I was listening to. Therefore, I would like to invite Councillor Neil Clark to come to Eastwood and deliver the same presentation to Eastwood residents. This is my second time of asking, by the way, and let's see if they agree. Let's do an audience vote. Let's ask them whether they want 2.9 million spent in Broxtowe or do they want a new council office for people to sit in. Let's ask the people of Eastwood whether they would prefer the council staff to fix pavements or fix Tory councils' reputations, which are slowly crumbling. Let's ask the people of Eastwood whether they want another Tory government. Wait, we've already had the answer to that in November when the Conservative vote collapsed. Mr. Chairman, I ask the council to support this alternative budget amendment, the only budget amendment, and I will be keeping a keen eye on what the Labour Party do today. Thank you for your time, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chairman, and I trust that colleagues will indulge me if I use the microphone rather than shouting across the chamber whilst we have this debate. I rise to speak to the budget proposals in the book and the main papers before us. I cannot support the ridiculous amendment that was offered from the other side of the chamber. I'd like to particularly pick up from Councillor Jackson's reprise of the work of the Children and Families portfolio area, particularly the successes over the past 12 months of the whole family safeguarding programme. We have the vision and faith of this administration to thank for the support given through last year's budget commitment of the initial £1.1 million to make this transformative programme a reality in Nottinghamshire. Faith in Children and Young People Committee's approval in December 21 to the innovative proposals, that we would deliver a de-escalation of need with more families receiving early help and fewer children requiring child protection plans or care proceedings, to see fewer older adolescent children needing to come into care, to be less reliant on procuring high-cost external residential care at a distance, and for more children having consistency of relationship with their social worker and less reliance on agency workers. Having acknowledged that vision and faith of the administration, Chair, I think it's also incredibly important that we acknowledge today the officers who've actually undertaken that work and carried it forward and are the ones who are achieving this on our behalf. The challenges and funding pressures on local authorities and the impact of the pandemic on children, local communities and public services has been widely reported. The Josh McAllister-led review into children's social care, which concluded last year, was welcomed nationally for the clarity of challenge it presented over the issues faced by local authorities, the length and breadth of the country. Additionally, the Association of Directors of Children's Services, ADCS, recently published their full report of the latest iteration of safeguarding pressures research, noting particularly that whilst grant funding over the past 2 years has helped to alleviate some demand pressures nationally, there is a clear need for a long-term, equitable and sufficient funding settlement for all local authorities responsible for children's social care. It's welcomed, therefore, that Government's first response to the McAllister Review were published last week, significantly in respect of tackling the practices which are driving up the costs of staffing, from the influence of agencies who are profiteering from the needs of our most vulnerable children and families, and to aid placement sufficiency with plans for a new children's funding formula and financial support to recruit and retain foster carers. In respect of this last, Chairman, last week I was able to sign off Nottinghamshire County Council's proposals for increases to foster carer allowances in this county, alongside refreshing our commitment to a D2N2 regional approach to recruiting and supporting foster carers. That's supporting each other rather than poaching each other's valuable carers and resources. Children's mental health and emotional well-being needs are seeing children's social care becoming the last resort for youngsters with severe mental health needs. Add to this the unplanned arrivals of unaccompanied asylum-seeking children being at the highest level in years, and you begin to see the complex and multitudinous circumstances that bring children into our services and into our care. For those children and young people who still need residential care, we have already opened one new children's home and purchased a second. We're currently proceeding with the purchase of a third and actively seeking the fourth. These will be where they are needed most. We are in advanced negotiations with NHS partners over a specialist care facility which was approved previously. This, Chairman, is the measure of our commitment to and investment in providing safe homes for our children. This is an administration that puts its money exactly where it needs to be. Whilst transformation through whole family safeguarding continues, we're also increasing early help and support through the rollout of family hubs. The early years and children's centre services will be key to implementing the whole family safeguarding programme and delivering the right help at an early stage to build resilience in families and to avoid drawing on more acute provision. The Best Start strategy, repeated recognition for UNICEF's baby-friendly initiatives, programmes to support healthy eating and cooking skills. This is to name but a few. Despite the challenges around the extent of non-statutory service provision, this council has continued to invest in youth services, including most lately the commitment to expanding the outdoor education facilities at the Mill Adventure Base. The last administration inherited a youth service provision under threat, including the agreed cessation of 2 youth buses, which are mobile youth centres. Not only did we reverse those threatened losses, but I'm proud to say we took delivery of 2 new youth buses late last year to replace the ageing stock. These are already on the road and are being enjoyed by the children and young people of Nottinghamshire. The annual Shadow event has been running for over 40 years, and the recently introduced Shadow Light is creating opportunities for younger children to get actively involved. The 4 Youth Awards are now 10 years on, recognising the achievements of children and young people who face significant challenge in their young lives. The additional opportunities provided through Inspire Youth Arts and the real difference that makes. And I'll pause at this point just to offer very particular congratulations to the duo Alt Black Era, 2 young ladies who performed their own material at the latest 4 Youth Awards in November, and they've just signed their first recording contract, Chairman. Our continuing investment in youth services is creating real opportunities for young people, and I'm sorry that the Minister's gone because I PS'd my notes here. Creating opportunities for young people to be their best selves. Chairman, I haven't even touched yet on this council's commitment to our schools estate and to the best educational experience for our children and young people. In the past 12 months, we've seen the opening of several new primary schools, the expansion and refurbishment of numerous others, Broomhill, Eastleigh, Bingham, Rushcliffe, to mention just some, plus agreements to improve, build or expand special school provision across the county area, Butlers Hill, Morven Park, Ashley, Radcliffe-on-Trent, Orchard and more. And this as well as the expansion of the National Secure Facility at Clayfields. My colleagues, Councillors Girling and Adair, are supporting the delivery of enhanced capacity and facilities across the estate. In addition to that, several of the county's schools have been accepted into the government's rebuilding programme. Most recently, Meaden, Garibaldi, All Saints, Chilwell, Dukeries and Holgate. This in addition to Toot Hill and Kirkby College, which were announced previously. Chairman, all of this illustrates just some of the work that we're undertaking through this budget to provide the very best opportunities and outcomes for children and young people, and I'm delighted to support the proposals in the substantive budget before us today. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Hollis.
Thank you, Chairman. And I think it takes me back to when I first became a county councillor in this chamber, and Councillor Mrs. Cutts was sat in the position and dealing with the budgets from there. And it just seems like an absolute disgrace where the Conservatives are still living in the past and not acknowledging the problems that the communities of Ashfield and Nottinghamshire are facing. And you look at the budget and then you listen to what Councillor Jackson describes as, you know, we're not raising it by the maximum, but we're raising it by 0.2 less. So this council tax statement doesn't read 2.9 or 3%, it's going to read 2.8. Ultimately, that means, what, a couple of quid? But we're raising council tax to not do much with it. And I think some of the, before I go into more detail of what I want to say, but when you hear, like, shouted quite loudly, Councillor Bradley using comments like, "Oh, I'm now considered Anderson's sidekick." You know, I certainly hope that doesn't mean he also associates with BNP members and goes to things like scooter clubs, like Mr. Anderson does. I hope he doesn't mean that. But certainly associating in a jovial way with a man with that record, I think is slightly frustrating. But also with regards to some of the. So does anybody want to speak instead of me, or Councillor Carlton? No?
Yeah, actually, it's your own member, actually, so Karen, Councillor Hollis.
Okay. But this budget affects the whole of Nottinghamshire, and I purposely wanted to speak after Councillor Taylor because ultimately the department that she runs is something I feel quite passionate about. The children's services, particularly namely Sure Start centres. Only a few years ago, I had to sit here and we put an motion down to use contingency funds to save Sure Start centres across Nottinghamshire, but namely the one in Huthwaite. Funding was cut because we wanted to move to this large-scale hub system, and of course it's named that Hucknall was going to be the identified hub for Hucknall. But then, surprise, surprise, 3 weeks ago, I see in the national press that Nottinghamshire Council has failed for its bid to secure funding for the hub-style system for Sure Start centres, or the namesake of the thing.
Point
and
of
I'm thinking,
order,
so why
Chairman,
did we
if I
shut?
may. Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Hollis is confusing Sure Starts with children's centres. He's also confusing the timing of hub models, which are to be introduced through the government's family hub network. So, sorry, in that case, point of clarification, I apologise, Chairman.
Thank you. And I don't know how I go back to the people who run facilities like that, who, let's not forget, was a purpose-built children's centre, provided funds from the national government and the county council, to then to be told that actually the reason why you lost the 35 grand a year now isn't valid, but by the way, we're not going to get it back. And then obviously in the context of a cost of living, when we're asking people to pay a lot more money for the county council services, yet what I can see, residents of Huthwaite, Ashfield and Nottinghamshire aren't getting the service that they're paying for in no way, shape or form. And that's before I even start talking about the roads and pavements, Mr. Chairman. All I see is pothole after pothole after pothole. And while it might be okay for members in Rushcliffe and West Bridgeford and etc., we aren't seeing these kind of repairs in Ashfield. and statements that Councillor Clark puts out about how great the roads are just isn't resonating with any resident in Ashfield. And you've only got to look at roads like Common Road, Sutton Road, the A38, Carsick Road, and various others that are literally crumbling. And we aren't seeing the large scale patching. You've done one street in my division, and the amount of usage, number of cars per the amount of roads in my division is massive. So you'd get a lot of bang for your buck for doing something. And we fixed the A38 only last night, where, I kid you not, the length of this room there must have been 30 potholes. Rather than doing one big section, the council chose to fill potholes one by one with Viafix. Some of them were sealed. And we've got a great team in Carl Whitley and others in our area that are doing a fantastic job, but they can't do the job they need to with the resources they're getting. And I can't support the main budget today because simply it does nothing to alleviate the residents in my area's concerns. And simply putting it, money isn't an issue. We can find £500,000 to put a new cycle lane in, and it weren't private funds that paid for that, it was taxpayers' money at some point. We can find that money via our budgets to do that. And the fact we want to put another one in.
Point of clarification, Mr. Chairman, that's very misleading information, because that cycle lane funding does not come out of our budget, it comes out of the government's budget.
Councillor Hollis, I'm not exactly sure what I said that contradicted that. Taxpayers have paid £500,000 for something that I don't think anybody asked for, nobody wants, and frankly, it's a completely wasted money. And if we have got this money from the government, why haven't we got a top drawer full of stuff we actually want to do? Like, why did Ashfield get the biggest out of all 400 odd councils in the whole country? Why did we get the biggest settlement for all the local towns funding, etc.? Is because we did have a top drawer full of projects that we want to do. So when a funding stream does come available, we picked it up, slapped it on the table, and sent it in. I don't understand why, just for the sake of it, we want to put a cycle lane in, and we want to do another cycle lane cutting down some trees, despite saying that we have green credentials. I don't get it. And then bizarre press releases where you stand smiling next to the cycle lane and then wonder why there's comment after comment after comment saying, why don't you fix the road next door? That's what people want to do. So it's extremely frustrating. So, and then I want to also turn on to the amendment. At the time when we are working from home, and the leader himself there has got a county council provided laptop, which we all have. Most of the staff have these facilities as well. People do work from home, and it's a great lifestyle, and it's a great thing for working for the county. We've just knocked down all these buildings here. We're using Trent Bridge House less. Yet we want to now build new offices. I can't think of any organisations that are building new offices in the scale that we're building them. It makes no sense. Why aren't we using that money for the roads and pavements? And that's ultimately what the amendment is calling to do. Fix the problems that Nottinghamshire residents want to do. And Comrade Waters over there, who describes this as the people's budget, that's exactly what I support. Because when I'm knocking on doors, whether I'm knocking on doors in Collingham, Huthwaite, Eastwood, Bingham, wherever it might be, people tell me about the broken roads and pavements, not that they want new officers. That's why I'm supporting it. But the real close thing to my heart is the Councillors' Divisional Fund. And exactly as Councillor Steve Carr said, it's been cut from £10,000 right down to where it is proposed to be now at 3. I don't know, frankly, which groups I'm going to have to say no to next year. And the whole job of this county council is to make sure that we work for the public. We get funds as close to the ground as we possibly can. The divisional fund is the best way of doing it. And shame on members that don't use it. But every year I spend every penny in my divisional fund because it's valued by communities. And I really don't see the logic, particularly at a time of a cost of living crisis, of wanting to cut such funding. It makes no sense. And comments that Councillor Jackson made about not investing. I'm proud that Ashfield Council invests. We bring in £6 million from council tax and £4 million from investments. That's mean we don't have to cut as many things from the front line. We have a lot of Band A and B properties. We collect less council tax than Rushcliffe. We're providing more services, and I'm proud of that. And the fact that as a Conservative, you're willing to wait for handouts from the government in some sort of Labour style operation, I think is bizarre. You know, if Mike Pringle would have delivered that speech in Brisedio, I'd have thought to myself, I can understand where he's coming from, but not from a Conservative. It makes no sense. Surely capitalism and raising funds for yourself and the council standing on its own back is what we should do, not balancing the books from a government handout. It's bizarre. Ashfield Council doesn't do that, and I think it's a shame that Nottinghamshire County Council does. But I think just before I sit down, Mr. Chairman, I just want to do something for my own records, and that's just take a selfie of all the Conservatives behind me, because I don't think they'll be there next time. So just something to remember you all by. But anyway, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'll be supporting the amendment and voting against the budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hollis. Councillor Meakin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Follow that one, Councillor Hollis. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak upon the people's budget today. The alternative budget, but only one, is a chance to do the right by the people I represent across Kirkby in Ashfield and places like Coxwell and Kingsway Estate. My main aim is a bit to fix our broken roads and pavements. I want to concentrate, however, on the councillor's divisional fund. I am fortunate to present the area I was born, brought up in and live. Like all Kirkby residents, I am proud of where I live and fight for better Kirkby on a daily basis. One of the joys of representing Kirkby is the community spirit, people giving back to the town they love. Groups from food banks to music classes to our scouts, all run by amazing people. One such lady is Angie Peppard. Angie and her team of volunteers run our centre and the community transport people based on Pond Street, Kirkby. Members will probably see their famous buses travelling up and down the county to help residents get around. Some in Kirkby without a bus service rely on our centre. During COVID, our centre was amazing, transporting the elderly and disabled to get vaccinated. They also dropped off food parcels and medication. They are tremendous, and it's no exaggeration to say that they save lives. They don't just deal with community transport, Mr. Chairman. They also sort with vulnerable residents who live on a month-to-month existence, relying on donations and small amount they make from their charity shop. Angie Peppard is an hero. She leads heroes. Last year, we held our State of Ashfield debate. This year, we concentrate on the cost of living emergency, the emergency that continues to unravel before our very eyes. Angie came and spoke about our centre, and had been going to help, but also speak about the fall in disposable income and donations. Over the past few years, Councillor Daniel Williamson and I donated a substantial part of our council's divisional fund to our centre. Angie thanked the Nottinghamshire County Council and us for our support. She spoke in Ashfield how vital it was. We're ongoing events at our centre, including Cozy Cuppa and the chair-based exercise classes, providing social and physical activities and ultimately greater independence, and Cozy Mosey, their popular pensioners walking group. Now I want to see councillors' budgets cut from 5,000 to 3,000 a year to help amazing causes like our centre. It's criminal. It's wrong, and our budget amendment puts this right. I and other councillors could tell dozens of stories like this. To put this in perspective, Mr. Chairman, the 132,000 savings is about the same local MPs have hoovered up on donations and 3 tickets to football, cricket and hockey matches from organisations like gambling companies and posh private members' clubs in London. The decision is not right, Mr. Chairman, and our budget aims to reinstate the council's divisional fund to £5,000 so that councillors continue to support organisations and groups like our centre in Kirkby. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Meakin. Councillor John Cotty, this will be the last one before lunch, members.
Thank you, Chairman. In my community's portfolio lie the discretionary services of this council, the nice to have services that we still provide, which many other councils don't. We're proud to still have what I think is surely one of the best library and archive services in the country. with no fewer than 60 libraries across Nottinghamshire, including several smaller libraries which have tended to be shut down by other councils. This year, the County Council will be celebrating 7 years of its partnership with Inspire, who are immensely successful in delivering cultural, learning and library services across Nottinghamshire. They oversee the day-to-day management of not just 60 libraries, but a range of services including Nottinghamshire Archives, Inspire Youth Arts, Educational Library Service, Nottinghamshire Music Hub, Inspire Adult Learning and Inspire College. We will be investing around 12 million in continuing to run the library services in the coming year. And we promised before, these will be protected throughout the course of this Conservative administration. They aren't just about books, they're places of warmth, both emotionally and physically, not least at this time of the year. Additional funding has been approved by the County Council to continue to develop the library service. An upgrade to the public computer and network facilities was completed during 2022. And we are refurbishing 6 small libraries, part funded through a grant award from the Department of Culture, Media and Sport. Libraries, we will focus on further developing that role at small libraries in the village hubs of Burcoats, Blidworth, Bilsthorpe, Burton Joyce, Langold, Woodthorpe. Additional learning facilities are also going to be developed at Stapleford, Sutton and Kirkby libraries through Government Towns Fund investment. Country parks, we maintain a fantastic set of these across the county, supporting our commitment to health outdoor, leisure opportunities and promoting our heritage and green environment. Working with our service delivery partners, Nottinghamshire County Council invests around about £800,000 a year in 5 country parks: Rufford, Bestwood, Cockgrave, Sherwood and Home Pierpont. And I go back to 2009 when I was appointed opposition spokesman for culture, that 800,000 didn't even cover the Home Pierpont. So over those years we've worked with partners to bring that down. As part of our budget proposals today, we propose £500,000 investment of capital in purchasing 10 glamping modules, each sleeping up to 6 people, to be installed by the end of the next financial year in the grounds of Home Pierpont Country Park, and the remainder of the cost on that project will be paid for by Serco Leisure, who is our partner. The camping site at this country park has been especially successful during COVID, benefiting from a growing staycation market, and the provision of these extra new facilities will increase the average stay of campers, which usually do 1 and 2 nights, to more than that. Broadening our target market to visitors looking to use Home Pierpont as a base to explore tourist attractions across Nottinghamshire. Financially, this will be a win-win in return for our investment, and there will be a reduction in our annual revenue fee we pay Serco to manage the country park, while the extra capacity to host visitors will further benefit the Nottinghamshire visitor economy. Staying at one with nature, we're also been investing to create 5 more new local nature reserves on existing County Council green spaces, adding to the 67 local nature reserves already existing across Nottinghamshire, 6 of which we own. And we've submitted to Natural England for potential designation of the local nature parks for Cockgrave Country Park, Cockgrave Greenway, Dobb Park Hucknall, Kimberley Green, Great North Railway Path, Kimberley, Newstead Old Coal Stockyard, Freckland Wood and Limby Trail. Including our nature reserves, the County Council's green spaces comprises of 1,250 hectares of managed wildlife and people, including 5 sites of special scientific interest, 40 local wildlife sites and 57 kilometres of trails of multi-user routes. They make important contributions to nature recovery, carbon reduction, climate change resilience, flood management and our visitor economy. We'll continue to invest in various prestigious events that provide entertainment for our residents and bring visitors and their money into this county, such as the Tour of Britain and our new Nottinghamshire County Day. I was delighted that the world famous Tour of Britain returned to the county for the first time in 4 years with the 5th stage from West Bridgford to Mansfield, which took place on the 8th of September. The research from that Tour of Britain had generated 4.34 million in net visitor expenditure for Nottinghamshire's economy, with an impressive 225,000 people lining the 116-mile route. It was found that 69% of the spectators came from outside of the county to watch the race. The daily spend of day visitors per group were £48, while overnight visitors £135. 60% of fans said they would visit Robin Hood country again. More than 3/4 of the people came here with families, and 50% of the people revealed that the race had inspired them to continue or take up more cycling. So, Chairman, the benefits will hopefully be felt not just across the county's finances, but also the county's health and sense of well-being. They may be deemed nice to have rather than essential, but I think service and events like these are more and more besides carry extra importance at a time when aspects of life are particularly tough. Sorry. Councillor Jackson spoke earlier about the fact that we'd barely come to terms with the impact of COVID when events in Ukraine brought their own humanitarian challenges for the Ukrainian people and financial challenges for all of us in terms of inflation and the rising cost of living. Indeed, Chairman, I'm proud that some of the services in my portfolio have played a key part in meeting those challenges here for Nottinghamshire. Our superb local communities fund will be maintained at current levels in 23-24, supporting the huge contributions that the voluntary and community sector makes to our lives of our residents. And again, we will be investing 1.19 million in supporting small revenue projects, £500,000 in a variety of capital projects across the county, and £50,000 of revenue funding and promising talented athletes. Local Communities Fund is a member-led, and we are supported by a superb team of officers who have accumulated considerable expertise in assessing bids, ensuring the secure distribution of these monies and careful monitoring. It therefore makes perfect sense to expand their role to include administering and distributing the additional money that's arrived in Nottinghamshire through the Household Support Fund and the Homes for Ukraine scheme.
2 minutes.
To date, this council has distributed 3 million of government funding to sponsor hosting refugees from the Ukraine, and partner local authorities whose own employees have deployed their expertise and local knowledge to assist this work. By the end of March 2023, we will also have distributed a total of almost 17 million through 3 tranches of Government Household Support Fund to vulnerable Nottinghamshire residents who need that support, including the provision of free school meals at holiday times and assistance to people on pensionable age who were identified as requiring extra financial support. The Chancellor of the Exchequer announced in his autumn statement that a further 1 billion will be provided nationally to enable the extension of the Household Support Fund in 2023-24, devolved to local authorities to decide how best to allocate this additional funding. Household Support Fund is just one of many government initiatives designed to target the most vulnerable households across the UK, providing cost of living support worth 26 billion in the coming year, in addition to the benefits uprating, which is worth 11 billion to working age households and disabled people. Chairman, these are just some of the headlines from my portfolio. There are many other services and far more we do to serve our residents every day. But of course, now that our speaking time is limited than it was before, I am happy to support the recommendations within our presentation of the budget. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cotty. I did have the pleasure actually of opening some of the new refurbished libraries, and they've done an excellent job there. We now adjourn for lunch, members, and probably back here for 1:30, please.